I thought I would treat you to a demonstration of not one, not two, but 3 January seasonal sustainable floral creations that you can make right now. And if you think there's absolutely nothing to be found florally in the January garden, I am here to prove you otherwise. So let's get straight into it and make these 3 fabulous, simple floral creations. Right, floral creation number 1. Super simple, using just 4 ingredients. You want to get your hands on a vase, make sure it's filled with water. Here I'm using a vase that I've started to hand paint. That's right, I'm not just a floral creator, I've got many talents. I hope you like it. And we're going to start off with 5 stems of bushy foliage. You could use something like viburnum. Here what I'm using is Pyrrhus, and it's a wonderful winter plant. In January it has these buds that are really lovely zingy green, but dependent on the variety, in February these will be white or pink. And I'm just taking 5 stems and I'm placing them in the vase to give it real nice volume. It's got those beautiful cascading berries and instantly it has fantastic impact. Next, I'm going in with just 1 focal flower. This just to show that a little goes a long way. Now you could, if you're lucky and have a really nice early daffodil, use something like that, but I'm using a hellebore, and I made sure that the seed pods have started to form inside the centre so that it has a longer vase life. If you do cut hellebores and you struggle with their vase life, the fatter the seed pod is, the longer the vase life is a good rule of thumb. And you can also cut your stem end and sear it in a little boiling water for about 10 seconds maximum, and that will also help the vase life. But I've not had to do either of those things. I've just checked, it's got a few seed pods formed and it's lasted really well. And look, just 1 flower goes such a long way. Well, 1 stem, it's got multiple flowers, aren't we lucky? Next, for ingredient number 3, I'm going to go in with some juicy rose hips. So something of interest. They're like almost like cherry tomatoes. They're fabulous. But you could go in with something else, maybe some cascading hazel tassels or some heather, something else that you find interesting. But just again, a little goes a long way. Just 1 stem and another, and instantly we've got even more interest. And now lastly, to finish off, I'm going to add some height. So I'm going to use cornice stems. Cornice comes in many colours. You've got yellows, reds, deep, almost blackcurranty berry shades. Absolutely beautiful. And again, you don't have to use this. You could use something like, again, hazel or any seed heads or seed pods or winter interest plants that you can find that have a bit of height, just some twigs. They would be fantastic. And it just gives it a bit more movement, a bit more dynamicness, and it gives it more structure. And these stems are really helpful if you have any floppy flowers. This hellebore isn't floppy, but let's say it was, you could almost put a stem just underneath it, acting almost like a corset, just giving it support. But that, if I just add a few more stems in, I don't want to cover our beautiful hellebore, is it. Super simple. 4 ingredients, you can adapt it to what you have in your garden or that you're allowed to forage with permission. And that is our first January seasonal floral creation of fabulousness. And isn't that a little joy? And now we're going to go on to make creation number 2. It's creation 2 time, and we're making a lovely wreath. And to keep life simple, we're using a pre-made wreath base. Now you can of course make your own wreath base, which I actively encourage you to do, but if you are purchasing one, I actively encourage you to get one that's fully compostable, because the person you're giving it to, whether it's yourself, a family member, friend or customer, they want to be able to, when they're done with it, just throw it in the compost bin or the brown bin, fully guilt-free, knowing that it'll break down naturally. Whereas if you get something with wire in it, they've got to go to the effort of pulling it apart and separating it, which they may or may not do, so it might actually end up in landfill if it's got wire in. So I'd actively encourage you to use a sustainable, compostable wreath base. Now for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you might go, Gemma, I've seen that there's some wire in this wreath base, and there is. This is very rare that I use a wired wreath base, but this is very precious to me. I won this when I met the wonderful Dick and Angel Strawbridge, and because this is for myself, I know I will, and I have, taken it all apart, and I will continue to take it apart and reuse it. So for me, this will be sustainable, but I wouldn't give it as a gift to anybody else or a customer. Now, we're going to make a simple heather wreath because heather is abundant at this time of year and it's absolutely glorious. Now, I'm going to be full confession here. The heather I'm using has already been out of water for over a week, so it's starting to shed, but of course when I picked it fresh it didn't. So we're going to go in, but if you see things cascading down, that is why. Now, heather's brilliant because you don't need many long stems to make a lovely wreath. Just a few little short stems about the size of maybe twice the height of my finger, and even that's probably longer than I need. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of create crisscrosses on the wreath. So if I show you what I mean, we're going to have one piece going up and out towards the left, and then we're going to have another piece going across it up and out towards the right, so like a little X shape. And then we're going to repeat that. Another piece up and out towards the left, and another piece up and out towards the right. Don't like that piece that's just fallen out. And then you can just adjust it, so you've got a nice little bunch there. And then once you've got a little bunch, we're going to tie it in. Now, I'm using raffia for the same reason that I won't use wire, because it's fully compostable. Now, if you do use wire, it's a lot easier to loop as you go, as in you can hold a bunch in, hold another bunch in, loop, hold a bunch in, hold another bunch in, loop. But with raffia, I find it's easier to just use strips of raffia and to just tighten one bit at a time as I go. So I'm literally just tying it in, doing a double knot because my first knot's a bit loose, and that's it. That little cluster of heather is on there, and I can just snip off the ends of that raffia. Now, you can of course make this wreath by repeating that the entire way round the wreath, but of course we'll be here for a long time if I do that. So we're just going to do half a wreath, and then I'll show you how at the bottom I'm just repeating my criss and my cross. And I could take my time a bit more and really consider where things are being placed. But I'm trying to be semi-speedy for you. I'm making sure that the heather covers the raffia from the last crisscross so that we get real nice mechanics that are hidden. Taking another strip of raffia and tying it in. But of course, what you're going to notice is if I just do this second crisscross, I can't hide the raffia the way I've been doing it if I repeat the crisscross but stop halfway. I could if I carried on all the way to the end, but because we're going to do it halfway, very simple, easy trick to get around that. So right now you can see that raffia there, and you might like it, you might want to do a nice little bow, but what we're going to do, I'm just going to readjust that slightly at the top. I've done it fast, but we're going to put one in the opposite way, and I'm going to just go slightly above that raffia. Can you see? If I just go slightly above that raffia, and I'm just going to create a hole in that wreath base using the stem, and I'm going to push that stem in, and it is covered that raffia. And now you can see where you've got any gaps. So here I've got a little gap here, well, quite a big gap. So we're going to take another sprig here. This is a great sprig of heather. Oh, it seems such a shame to cut that down because look how long that is. But I'm going to fill that gap in. And it is actually quite handy that it's got a long stem because I can thread this through. So I'm taking it and I'm creating a hole in the wreath base. You can use snips to kind of press in and get a hole if you do struggle, like I do, to create a gap in the wreath base. But a little perseverance and it will come out the other side. And if you just thread it to where it brings you the most joy, I quite like it a little bit out, but maybe not that much, so I'm going to pull it in a tiny bit more. But yes, I'm happy with that. And then I'm just going to cut off the end really close to the centre of that wreath base. Hard to do with one hand. And look at that, super simple. That is our wreath base. Now I could zhuzh it and add more. I could, like I say, go the whole way round, but that is super, super simple. You don't have to use heather, you could use something else. It's just a quick example of how you can make a fabulous January seasonal creation. I hope you enjoy. And we're on to, lastly, creation number 3. And lastly, we are on to creation number 3. And after all of that talk about not using wire in our wreath bases if we can help it, guess what we're using in creation number 3? That's right, you've guessed it, wire. This time, chicken wire. Now, I know you might be thinking, Gemma, you just said about sustainability and keeping things compostable, and I do stand by that, but I do think it's slightly different using chicken wire in a vase for 2 reasons. One, if you cut it to size to your vase, you can always keep it with your vase, inside it, nearby to it, so you are very, very likely to reuse this over and over again. Secondly, whether this is for yourself, a family member, a friend, a customer, or an event, they're going to want to keep their vase, so they are definitely going to chuck away the stems, and therefore it's a lot easier to compost and a lot easier to make, deassemble as it were. But with a wreath base, I think it's slightly different. I think people just have them, once they're done with them, they chuck them, but people are not going to chuck a vase. Not sane people anyway. So here we've got our chicken wire, which I've just kind of moulded into about a shower cap shape. I wouldn't really put it on my head because it's not going to feel very nice. And we're going to pop it into the vase, and those little holes are going to act as stem holders. Now, if you've seen any of my floral creations in the past, you know I'm a big fan of using nesting foliage to avoid even using chicken wire or broken stems. But for this one, I think chicken wire is the most helpful because those gaps are just the size for what we need today. And we are going to be making a textural delight. Now, I'm nothing but a realist. I know that for a lot of people, January in their gardens has very, very little colour. So rather than trying to insist there's colour out there, which there is, but I'm going to embrace the lack of colour because we've all most definitely got access to brown at this time of year. And so I'm going to prove that brown can be so interesting and so fantastic. And that's what we're doing today. We're making a textural delight. So I'm starting off with wonderful Nigella seed pods. Look at them. Aren't they fabulous? Really gnarly. And I've just left these in the worst conditions possible. They've been left outside, they've been chucked in the greenhouse, they've been really, really abused, and they still look fantastic. Now you could get hold of whatever you can find. Branches, twigs, seed pods, teasels, anything with a bit of texture and gnarliness is going to be fantastic for this. Now I'm going to grab a big bunch like this, and I'm going to really try and get it tight to go into one of those chicken wire holes, and I'm going to put it on this, what will be the left hand side for you but the right hand side for me, hole of the chicken wire, and just stab it in. And this is going to give us some instant textural gnarliness. And I promise you, if you can find, which you definitely can at this time of year, lots of different brown stems, you can make this textural delight and it will look brilliant. Next, what I'm going in with is plantain. You know that common weed that comes up with a little tufty head? This is that. I've just let them dry. Again, I've got a bunch of it, but you could grab whatever you can find, twigs, hazels, seed pods, weeds. At this time of year, if it's got any kind of texture, it would be perfect for this. And again, I'm holding it tight to fit it into one of those holes, and I'm putting this at the front left. So we've kind of had our front left corner and our back left corner sorted, and any broken stems I'm just pulling out. But again, they're just different shapes. We've got this really nice long oval and then this really chunky wide ball, and they just look brilliant. Trust the process. If you are looking at this and going, it's just brown, it's not going to look good, I promise it will. Next, I'm going in with dried feverfew. Again, dried terribly, battered and abused, chucked here and there, but it's got this wonderful etherealness to it. And something like a weed head, a seed head, a dorcas, an aquilegia, all of those things would be great. anything that you can get your hands on, and just go into the woods. I'm sure you will find on the ground that has fallen some textural interest. Obviously leave stuff for the insects and the wildlife, but what you're allowed to take, make sure you always forage with permission, and I'm sure in your own back garden you'll have something. Do, because it'll be brilliant. And I'm just going to take this again, I'm trying to keep it nice and tight, and I'm pushing it through onto what will be my left side but your right side front corner. And so we've kind of got these corners sorted, just got a bit missing at the back here, but that's fine. We're going to fill that in very nicely. Now this is where you want something maybe with a different colour, and I've got wonderful wild grasses, again just plucked from the meadow, nothing fancy at all here, just different colours of brown, different shades of beige, and lots of texture. And I'm going in now into this back corner behind that feverfew, just again keeping it tight as I can and pushing through into that chicken wire hole, and we've got a bit more interest. And I've also got some more grasses, again just wild, picked from the field, nothing fancy, and I'm going to just a bunch, just a handful, and I'm just going to put them right here at the front, just in front of that view. And look already how fabulous and textural that is. If I bring that closer to you, I mean, it's just an absolute feast, and you can imagine what this feels like. It's very tactile, but this is where, if you only get one thing, I'd really recommend this. I don't know why I don't see it more often, because I think it's fantastic. It's globe artichoke, or cardoon. It's the family member cardoon family member, you know what I mean, it's part of that plant family, and it's edible if you get the globe artichoke plant. It has brilliant silver foliage, which you do admittedly see that used, and these brilliant seed heads. But if you peel back the seed heads, which are quite gnarly, and I could just use them, in fact let me show you one that I haven't peeled back. This is what it looks like unpeeled back, really textural, really wonderful. But if you do peel back those little shells, you can see it reveals a very fluffy centre, and you can pull out those dark tufty bits, and you end up with a kind of fluffy pom-pom. Now that's fantastic, but for me that light colour against all of the brown really brings me joy. So in classic Blue Peter fashion, here are some I've made fluffy earlier, and just look at it, it's brilliant. Now I will caveat it with, it does lose its seed pods quite easily, so can you see you end up with, you know, those little wish fluff balls, it's like, but once it's in place, and it's so good. I really love it, and I think for January you really can't beat it. I mean, there's not really much you can have as a focal flower, but look at that, you could have it as a fascinator on your head, you could make some, just have this alone in a vase, but now we're going to add it to this for our wonderful textural joy. And I'm going to fill in this centre bit, any gaps I can, with this wonderful cardoon fluffy seed pods, which we know we've made fluffy just by pulling out those gnarly dark outer shells to reveal this super sweet teddy bear fluffy centre. I mean, I just think it's great. And like you can probably see, I'm getting fluff over me right now, but once it's made, I'll just hoover it up. It's not a big deal. It's just so lovely and so sweet. And we've got a short one here that I'm just going to put right at the front. But it really takes what is otherwise a bunch of brown, gnarly ingredients, which are great, but it really elevates it into a beautiful creation filled with texture and interest, and you just want to touch it. Oh, it's still in one piece. We just had a little stem snap, but nothing major. And look at that. That is creation number 3. It's textural heaven. And I promise you, the cardoons being the main exception that I'd highly recommend growing, everything else you can find alternatives for. But even if you wanted to use something different here, you could use teasels, you could use honesty seed pods, you could use any dried flowers you can get your hands on, or anything focally right now. You can have a strip of purple heather through that brown. use your imagination, create something. And if you're on Instagram, do tag me in whatever you create, because I love seeing what people create. And you could go further with this. I've even got other stems here which you can add into it. I mean, this is wonderful penstemon, and it's one of my favourite seed pods. It's like a chocolatey brown, and I can just insert it anywhere I just think, oh, I want a bit more texture there, actually. And because these are dried, I don't have to worry about it going perfectly in, because there's no water, of course, in this vase. I've got here some weed seed pods, literally just picked off on the side of the road, some weeds that were growing in front of my house that I didn't want there. Plonk them in. Some Aquilegia seed pods with those kind of jester hats. And I like the fact that there's broken stems. I think the broken stems are interesting. Oh, beeping going on outside. Hope nothing's happening major on the roads today. And again, poppies. Just inserting a few extra things to give it a bit more gnarliness. Don't like where I put that poppy. But you get the idea. I could keep on going all day with this, but I'm going to stop there. That is creation number 3, a textural January floral creation. And between that, our heather wreath, and our Pyrrhus hellebore rosebud and cornice creation, we have got 3 seasonal January floral creations, and I would love to see what you create. I really hope you are enjoying the YouTube channel so far. If you haven't already, do subscribe, give it a like and a comment. I love connecting with people, and I'm really trying to prove that there is something seasonal to be enjoyed at any time of the year. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and wishing you all the best. TTFN, ta-ta for now.